And last week, 3 more Democrats added their names to the list of candidates for president in 2020. So we've got 5 now and counting. So Phil Matier and I asked former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown how many people he thinks will eventually be in this race.
Oh, I would guess more than 10. But they'll start dropping out. Come next January, you'll see people pulling the plug because they will not have gotten the money they need. They will not have gotten the impression with the public and reaction from the public. But there'll still be 4 or 5. And the 4 or 5 will be the obvious ones. You know, Kamala, it will be Joe Biden, and 3 others. Probably Elizabeth, and of course Bernie. He's got nothing else to do. You know.
Melissa, how important is Biden being in or Biden being out to the equation going forward? He's sort of standing off on the side. So where is that a real thing?
Oh, I think it's hugely important. I mean, especially if you're a donor or you're a big name that, is looking to, who you're going to endorse in the race, and you've got already 5 people trying to get your money, trying to get your endorsements, and you're saying, hey, wait a minute, let me see if Biden's going to be in this race, because the polls show this is his to lose to some degree for the Democrats.
Do you agree with that?
I agree wholeheartedly, and Biden is playing it proper, though. There's nothing worse than being overexposed when you're under-talented. And Biden has got to avoid, he's got to avoid exposure. He really does have to avoid exposure. He makes one mistake after another in utterances and what have you, and it's always been fun. It's no longer fun when you're at the top of the heap. So he literally has to stay out of the public eye until the very last moment. He doesn't need an early rollout. He's been rolling out for the last 8 years.
Well, that's true. But also, I mean, remember, the first primary debates for Democrats are coming up in June. So we're just a few months away. So ideally, if he's going to get in, he's going to have to announce sometime in the next 4 months or so.
For the others that are hopping in, including just the other day, Cory Booker, how do you maintain interest going forward? Because after your announcement, it's like, okay, now what?
You need a lot of money. You need a ton of money. You need money similar to what was spent in the school board race, superintendent's race in California, where you had the guy who was for charter schools versus the guy who the teachers were backing. Every day there was another ad, another series of ads. If you had the money to be able to do that, you would continuously be a part of the mix. Only Kamala Harris gets the natural pickup, similar to what Trump got in 2015. Trump was always the lead story for every newscaster all across America. So far, Kamala has come nearly occupying that position. All the rest of them are in the debris.
The debris. Cold.
So when you get this really crowded field, how does someone sort of catapult themselves to the front? How do they sort of distinguish themselves with the voters when there's such a crowded field? Well,
we see this a lot actually even in San Francisco politics or Bay Area politics, where people pretty much agree on policy issues, right? So how do you make a distinction? A lot of it then comes down to personality, it comes down to preferences, it comes down to just the way they're approaching the candidacy altogether. So, for example, we talked to an expert just the other day who pointed out that Kamala Harris has positioned herself as a fighter, Cory Booker as a lover, right? He's Mr. Unity, universal love, I'm bringing people together. She says, no, I'm a fighter. It may come down to just which of those approaches you prefer, to the extent that there aren't any sort of underlying issues at stake. And it can get very personal when you're talking about, trying to distinguish between one candidate and another on sort of personal characteristics. You can start looking at, who was your, third cousin, it starts becoming relevant, yeah.
Gotcha.
And fears of another government shutdown are looming as Congress negotiates a new spending bill. President Trump says his position remains wall or nothing. The president told Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan that he might try to bypass Congress. He also hinted he may declare a national emergency to secure funding for a wall across the U.S. border with Mexico. And he may even do it during his State of the Union speech on Tuesday.
Would you shut down the government again?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens on February 15th. And
you're not taking it off the table?
Well, I don't take anything off the table. I don't like to take things off the table.
Now, a 17-member bipartisan conference committee is trying to strike a deal over border security funding. But without a wall, the president calls that effort a, quote, waste of time. Now, House Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi has some big challenges ahead in the next 2 weeks, whether to compromise with the president or compromise with her own membership. Phil Matier and I asked former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown his thoughts.
Nancy Pelosi is occupying a position that we politicians would really love to be in. You took on the most important, powerful man in the world, and you humbled him. You made him back down completely, and you were smart enough not to rub his face in it while he's down there on the ground trying to get up. All Nancy Pelosi needs to do is maintain that high level. Her caucus, nobody can challenge her now because she defeated Trump. No other Democrat since Trump took office has been able to do that. And she has made it so that suddenly her attendant is a fellow named Schumer. And what's his role? He's head of the Democrats in the Senate.
That's cute, but if she comes up with, if there is a compromise that says we're going to have to spend a lot more money on border security, will she be able to sell it to the far left of her own party?
Well, so far, as long as it doesn't include a wall, she's been consistent in saying we are in agreement that we need more border security. We think it's a good thing to have more judges and more agents. We just don't want the wall. And if she can get away with saying that, then I think she'll be fine.
Phil, she's beyond any specificity with reference to the content of whatever proposal becomes a settlement. Nancy Pelosi will be able to define it for interpretive purposes.
So what you're saying is she'll just take the word wall out. It'll be a physical structure. It will include elements of a wall. It'll have a barbed wire fence. It'll have drones. It'll have all that. She'll just stop saying
That's
the wall.
what she has consistently said.
Yeah.
She has said, I want good security. I want it contained in whatever way it seems appropriate and wherever it seems appropriate. And a wall is not one of them. And I want to remember, it's a medieval vanity, isn't it?
Oh,
Kamala called it?
yes, medieval vanity project. Well, the thing is, I mean, to your point, I mean, the mayor's absolutely right. The Democrats have funded these steel slat barriers before, and she argued that those were fences.
Right. If he walks out and says, thank you for the wall, what does she do?
She smiles and says, as she usually does, Mr. President, you really have a way. And he will be finished again.
Now, before, when Democrats funded what they called a fence, Nancy Pelosi went on the floor of the House and said, you can call it whatever you want, Mr. President, as long as you sign the bill. And so we may be back in that position again.